Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Stranger at My Door. The rain hammered against my study window as I reviewed quarterly reports from my security consulting firm. After 15 years building my company from nothing, I'd learned to appreciate these quiet Sunday evenings. My wife, Rebecca, was at her book club, or so she claimed, and the house felt peaceful without her constant chatter about her yoga instructor friends and their latest gossip. The doorbell's chime cut through the silence. I glanced at my watch. 8:47 p.m. Too late for neighbors, too early for emergencies. Setting down my whiskey, I walked to the front door, noting the small figure huddled under our porch light through the peephole. When I opened the door, a little girl with auburn hair and striking green eyes identical to mine, looked up at me with a mixture of relief and desperation. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, soaked to the bone despite the small backpack clutched to her chest. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm. Before I could react, she launched herself into my arms, her small body trembling against mine. "Dad, I missed you so much. They told me you didn't want to see me anymore, but I knew that wasn't true." My blood turned to ice. I'd never seen this child before in my life, yet she felt familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. "Who are you?" I managed, my voice hoarse. She pulled back, confusion replacing the joy in those emerald eyes. "I'm your daughter. I'm Lily. Mommy, Rebecca, said you were too busy to visit, but Mrs. Patterson died, and they said I had to come home now." The name Rebecca hit me like a sledgehammer. My wife, Rebecca. But we'd never had children. She'd claimed for years that she was infertile, that it was her greatest regret. I'd accepted it, built our life around just the two of us. "Sweetheart," I said carefully, crouching to her level, "I think there's been a mistake." "What's your last name?" "Morrison," she said without hesitation. "Lily Grace Morrison, just like you taught me." "Morrison, my last name." My hands began to shake as I studied her face more closely. The eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw, even the way she tilted her head when confused. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected my own childhood features. "Come inside," I said quietly, leading her to the living room. "You're freezing." As I wrapped her in a throw blanket, my mind raced. If this child was truly mine, it meant Rebecca had lied about everything. Not just her infertility, but about an entire pregnancy, birth, and apparently giving away our child. "Lily," I said gently, "tell me about where you've been living." "With Mrs. Patterson in Portland. She was nice, but she got sick. Mommy Rebecca would visit sometimes and bring me presents. She said you were always working and that it was better if I stayed with Mrs. Patterson until you weren't so busy anymore." Each word was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. Rebecca had been making trips to Portland for spa weekends for the past 8 years. I never questioned it, trusted her completely. Did Mommy Rebecca ever bring anyone else with her? Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Uncle Todd. He was funny and brought me toys. They said they were planning a surprise for you, but Mrs. Patterson got worried before they could tell you." "Todd." My stomach dropped. Todd Brennan, Rebecca's friend from college who'd moved to Portland 5 years ago. The same Todd she'd insisted was just a friend when I'd questioned their frequent phone calls. The front door opened, and Rebecca's laughter echoed through the foyer, followed by a deeper male voice I recognized. They were both home early, and they weren't alone. "Lily," I whispered urgently, "I need you to stay very quiet and hide behind this couch, okay? Don't come out until I tell you." Her eyes widened with fear, but she nodded and scrambled behind the furniture just as Rebecca walked into the living room, arm in arm with Todd Brennan. They both froze when they saw me standing there, their faces draining of color in perfect synchronization. "Blake," Rebecca stammered, "you're home early. We just wanted dinner to catch up." 8 years, I said quietly, my voice carrying the weight of controlled fury. "Our daughter has been alive for 8 years, and you both knew." The silence that followed was deafening. Todd's face had gone completely white, while Rebecca's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally managed, but her voice cracked on every word. From behind the couch came a small sneeze. Rebecca's eyes darted toward the sound, and I saw recognition and terror flash across her features. That's when I knew everything Lily had told me was true. Chapter 2. The DNA Truth. The confrontation that followed was brief but brutal. Rebecca collapsed into tears, admitting to the pregnancy she'd hidden, the secret birth, and the decision to give Lily to a foster mother she'd personally selected in Portland. Todd stood silent, his face a mask of guilt and fear. "She was an accident," Rebecca sobbed. "We were young, and you were so focused on building your business. We thought it was better this way." "Better for who?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. Years of military service and building a security company had taught me to keep my emotions locked down when planning became necessary. Better for you and your boyfriend to continue your affair without the inconvenience of a child? It wasn't like that. "Get out," I said simply. "Both of you. Now." They left without another word, Rebecca pausing only to grab a suitcase. Todd waited by his car, and I watched from the window as they drove away together, not even trying to hide their relationship anymore. Lily emerged from behind the couch, tears streaming down her face. "Are you really my daddy?" "I think so, sweetheart. But we're going to make sure." The next morning, I called my lawyer, Dr. Patricia Hayes, and my personal investigator, Marcus Kim, two people I'd worked with extensively in my security business and trusted implicitly. "Blake," Patricia said after I'd explained the situation, "this is going to get complicated fast. If the child is yours and Rebecca gave her away without your knowledge or consent, she's committed several felonies." "That's not my primary concern right now," I replied, watching Lily color at my kitchen table. She'd slept in the guest room, and I'd spent the night researching Portland foster care systems and missing children reports. "I want a DNA test first. I want to know everything about what they've been doing for the past 8 years. Marcus Kim arrived that afternoon with a mobile DNA testing kit. A former FBI agent turned private investigator, Marcus had helped me with several high-stakes corporate security cases. He was thorough, discreet, and utterly ruthless when hunting down information. "The test will take 48 hours, he said, sealing the samples. But Blake, looking at her, he shook his head. "The resemblance is unmistakable. I know. I want you to dig into Rebecca and Todd's activities. Financial records, travel patterns, communications. Everything. Consider done. But what are you planning?" I looked at Lily, who was showing me a drawing she'd made of our house. "I'm planning to be a father. Everything else comes after that." The DNA results arrived Tuesday morning while Lily was watching cartoons. Dr. Hayes called me into my study to deliver the news we all expected. 99.7% probability of paternity. "She's yours, Blake. Completely and unquestionably." I felt a strange mixture of joy and rage. Joy at discovering I had a daughter, a brilliant, sweet, beautiful daughter who'd been stolen from me. Rage at the 8 years of her life I'd missed, the birthdays, first steps, first words, all because of Rebecca's selfishness and deception. What are my legal options? Full custody won't be difficult given the circumstances. Rebecca essentially kidnapped your child and facilitated an illegal adoption. She'll be lucky to avoid prison time. Marcus walked in with a thick file folder. "You're going to want to see this." The investigation had revealed a pattern of deception that went far beyond a simple affair. Rebecca and Todd had been planning this for years. Financial records showed Todd had been paying for Lily's care through a complex series of shell companies. Rebecca had been visiting Portland monthly, not weekly, as she'd told the foster mother. But the most damning evidence was in their communications. Marcus had recovered deleted emails and text messages dating back 5 years. They were planning to wait until Lily turned 18 and then reintroduce her to you as Todd's daughter from a previous relationship, Marcus explained. They wanted to integrate her into your life slowly while maintaining their affair. They were going to tell me she was his. According to their messages, yes. They figured by 18, you'd be too attached to care about the deception, and Lily would be old enough to keep their secret. The casual cruelty of it stunned me. They'd planned to let me love a child while lying about her parentage, all to cover their betrayal. Patricia leaned forward. Blake, this gives us everything we need for criminal charges and civil suits. But I have to ask, what do you want the end game to be? I stood and walked to the window, watching Lily play in the backyard with the dog we'd adopted just that morning, a golden retriever she named Scout. She was laughing, running around without a care in the world, finally home where she belonged. I want them destroyed, I said quietly. Not just legally. I want their lives dismantled piece by piece until they understand exactly what they took from me and from her. Blake, I'm not talking about anything illegal, I clarified. I'm talking about using every legal, financial, and social tool at my disposal to ensure they pay for what they've done. They've had 8 years to enjoy their deception. Now it's my turn. Patricia and Marcus exchanged a look. They both knew me well enough to understand that when I made this kind of decision, I followed through completely. What do you need from us? Marcus asked. Everything you can find about their vulnerabilities. Employment, finances, social connections, family relationships. I want to know every person who matters to them and every source of stability in their lives. And then we remove those sources one by one, until they have nothing left except the consequences of what they've done. Chapter 3. Building the Foundation. 3 weeks later, I had custody of Lily and enough evidence to bury Rebecca and Todd in both criminal and civil court. But court proceedings would be quick. I wanted their destruction to be slow, thorough, and devastating. The first phase was establishing my new life with Lily. I'd enrolled her in an excellent private school, hired a part-time nanny named Mrs. Garcia for when I traveled, and begun the process of undoing 8 years of lies. Lily adapted remarkably well, though she sometimes asked about Mommy Rebecca and Uncle Todd. They had to go away for a while, I told her honestly. But you don't have to worry about that anymore. You're home now. Meanwhile, Marcus had compiled comprehensive profiles on both Rebecca and Todd. Rebecca worked as a marketing coordinator for a small boutique advertising firm owned by her college roommate, Jennifer Walsh. Todd had parlayed his Portland connections into a moderately successful real estate business, specializing in luxury vacation rentals. Their weaknesses were becoming clear. Rebecca's employer, Jennifer, was a devout Catholic who'd built her company on traditional family values. She regularly donated to children's charities and had no idea her employee had abandoned her own child. More importantly, Jennifer's business was struggling financially and couldn't afford to lose major clients. Todd's real estate business depended heavily on referrals from a tight-knit network of Portland's social elite. His reputation was everything in that market, and he'd positioned himself as a trustworthy family man despite never having been married. Phase 1. I explained to Marcus over dinner while Lily did homework upstairs. I want you to contact every major client of Rebecca's company and Todd's real estate business. Use shell companies if necessary. Become potential customers. What's the angle? You're going to ask very specific questions about their backgrounds, family values, trustworthiness, experience with children. Let them volunteer information about Rebecca and Todd's character. Marcus smiled grimly. And when they inevitably lie or misrepresent themselves, then we'll have documented evidence of their dishonesty in professional settings. Perfect grounds for complaints to licensing boards, professional associations, and current clients. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Neither Rebecca nor Todd knew about the investigation yet. As far as they knew, I was focused solely on establishing custody of Lily. They'd both hired lawyers for the inevitable divorce and custody proceedings, but they had no idea what was coming. My second move was more personal. Dr. Jennifer Walsh received an anonymous package containing copies of Rebecca's communications with Todd, including explicit messages sent during work hours using company equipment. The messages also detailed their plans to deceive me about Lily's parentage. Patricia had carefully sanitized the evidence to protect Lily's privacy while making the professional misconduct clear. 3 days later, Rebecca was fired. She called me that evening, her voice shrill with panic. Blake, I lost my job. Jennifer won't even tell me why. She just said I violated company policy. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied, genuinely meaning it. I didn't want Lily to suffer because her mother was unemployed. Perhaps you should think about what you might have done to damage her trust. This is about Lily, isn't it? You're trying to ruin my life because I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake, Rebecca. You planned and executed an 8-year deception that involved kidnapping my daughter. Those aren't mistakes, they're calculated choices. The silence stretched between us. I want to see her, Rebecca finally said. No, she's my daughter too. You gave up that right when you gave her away without telling me. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. Don't contact me or Lily again unless it's through legal channels. I hung up and found Lily standing in the doorway, her small face serious. Was that Mommy Rebecca? Yes, sweetheart. Is she sad? I knelt down to her level. She made some very bad choices that hurt people she was supposed to love. Sometimes when we hurt people, we end up sad because of the consequences. Lily nodded solemnly. Mrs. Patterson told me that actions have consequences. She said that's how we learn to be good people. Mrs. Patterson was very wise. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat in my study planning the next phase. Rebecca losing her job was just the beginning. She and Todd had systematically destroyed my trust, stolen 8 years of my daughter's life, and planned to deceive me for decades to come. They wanted to play games with my family? I was going to teach them exactly how dangerous that was. Marcus called the next morning with an update on Todd's business. I've made contact with 5 of his biggest clients, representing about 60% of his annual income, posing as a potential investor looking for a property management partner. And he's been very forthcoming about his traditional family values and experience with children. Mentioned several times that he believes strongly in family stability and honest communication. Perfect. Document everything. Blake, he's walking right into this. They both are. Good. They had 8 years to come clean. They chose deception every single day. Now, they get to live with the consequences of that choice. Todd's downfall would be more complex than Rebecca's, but equally devastating. His entire business model depended on trust and reputation in a small, gossipy market. Once his clients learned about his role in abandoning a child and deceiving her father, his referral network would evaporate overnight. But I wasn't just planning to destroy their careers. I was planning to dismantle their entire support system, one carefully orchestrated revelation at a time. By the time I was finished, they would understand exactly what they had taken from Lily and me, and they would pay for every single day of it. Chapter 4. The Web Titans. 6 weeks after Lily came home, Todd's real estate empire began to crumble. Marcus had done his work perfectly, establishing trust with Todd's key clients while secretly documenting every lie he told about his character and family values. The revelation came through Portland's tightly connected social media networks. Someone, whose identity would forever remain anonymous, began sharing court documents from my custody case, complete with evidence of Todd's role in concealing Lily's existence from her father. Within 48 hours, 3 of Todd's biggest clients had terminated their contracts. His luxury vacation rental business, built on referrals from Portland's elite social circles, was hemorrhaging money as property owners discovered their family-friendly property manager had helped hide a child from her father for 8 years. But Todd's professional destruction was only the beginning. The real masterpiece was what I'd planned for his personal life. Marcus had discovered that Todd had been engaged to a woman named Catherine Mills for the past 2 years. Catherine was a pediatric nurse who'd been devastated by her own infertility struggles and desperately wanted children. Todd had convinced her that he shared her family values and dream of adoption. Catherine had no idea about Todd's affair with Rebecca or his role in abandoning Lily. She found out when she received a carefully compiled package of evidence, photos of Todd and Rebecca together, communications about their affair, and most damning of all, messages where Todd complained about the burden of financially supporting a child he'd helped create but didn't want to acknowledge. Catherine ended their engagement that same day, but not before sharing the evidence with her entire social circle, including several prominent Portland families who'd been referring clients to Todd's business. The psychological pressure was precisely calculated. Todd's entire identity was built on being a successful, trustworthy family man. Watching that reputation crumble in real time was devastating him far more effectively than any physical confrontation could have. Meanwhile, Rebecca was struggling to find new employment. The Portland marketing world was small, and word had spread quickly about her family situation and sudden termination from Jennifer's company. Every interview seemed to go well until employers had conducted background checks or contacted references. I made sure that anyone who looked into Rebecca's background would find public records of the custody case, painting a clear picture of a woman who'd hidden her child from the child's father for nearly a decade. But her professional struggles were secondary to what I had planned for her family relationships. Rebecca came from a prominent Catholic family in Sacramento. Her parents, Robert and Mary Hayes, were pillars of their community. He was a retired judge. She was a longtime volunteer for children's charities. They'd always been puzzled by Rebecca's claims of infertility, especially given that she'd shown no interest in adoption or fertility treatments. They were about to learn why. I flew to Sacramento on a Friday morning, leaving Lily with Mrs. Garcia. Marcus had helped arrange a meeting with Robert Hayes under the pretense of discussing a security consulting contract for his former courthouse. Mr. Morrison, Judge Hayes said, welcoming me into his study, Marcus spoke highly of your expertise. How can I help you? Actually, Your Honor, I'm here about your daughter, Rebecca. His demeanor shifted immediately. Rebecca? What about Rebecca? I laid out the entire situation calmly and methodically, providing documentation for every claim. The secret pregnancy, the hidden child, the 8 years of deception, the affair with Todd. Most importantly, I showed him photos of Lily, his granddaughter he'd never known existed. Judge Hayes aged 10 years in 10 minutes. You're telling me that Rebecca has a child, our grandchild, and she's been lying to us about it for 8 years? Yes, sir. And she gave Lily away without my knowledge or consent, which constitutes kidnapping under both Oregon and California law. Mary Hayes had joined us, drawn by the serious tone of our conversation. When she saw the photos of Lily, she gasped audibly. She looks just like Rebecca did at that age, she whispered. Oh my God, Robert. What has our daughter done? Would you like to meet your granddaughter? I asked quietly. They flew to Portland the next day. The reunion was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Lily was shy at first, but she quickly warmed to her grandparents, especially when Mary showed her photo albums of Rebecca as a child. The resemblance was unmistakable, and the love was immediate. We had no idea, Robert kept repeating. Rebecca told us she couldn't have children. We've been praying for grandchildren for years. She's been living in foster care, Mary said, holding Lily close. Our granddaughter in foster care, while we had empty bedrooms and broken hearts. I didn't need to say anything else. Rebecca's parents understood exactly what their daughter had stolen from all of them. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Robert Hayes called his daughter. Rebecca, your mother, and I need to see you immediately. Dad, I can't right now. I'm dealing with some legal issues. We know about the legal issues. We know about Lily. We know about everything. The silence on the phone was deafening. Get on a plane tomorrow morning. We'll discuss your future after you explain how you could hide our granddaughter from us for 8 years while we grieve for the children we thought we'd never have. Rebecca arrived in Sacramento the next day to face the full fury of parents who discovered their daughter was not the person they'd raised. By the time she left, she'd lost not only their emotional support, but their financial backing as well. Robert Hayes had been quietly helping Rebecca with rent and car payments for years. That assistance ended immediately. More importantly, the Hayes family was extensively connected throughout California's legal and social communities. Word of Rebecca's actions would spread quickly through those networks, making her job search even more difficult. But the most devastating blow was yet to come. As Rebecca flew back to Portland, broke and isolated, she had no idea that her affair with Todd was about to be exposed in the most public way possible. Marcus had been working with Catherine Mills, Todd's ex-fiancée, to compile a comprehensive timeline of Todd and Rebecca's relationship. Catherine, devastated by the betrayal and Todd's role in abandoning a child, had become an invaluable ally in ensuring the truth came to light. Together, they prepared a detailed account of the affair, complete with photos, messages, and financial records showing Todd's support of Lily while lying to his fiancée about wanting children. The story was published as a guest editorial in Portland's alternative weekly newspaper, written by Catherine, entitled, "The Man I Almost Married Helped Hide a Child from Her Father." The article went viral within hours. Portland's close-knit social community erupted in discussions about Todd and Rebecca's deception. The story was particularly damaging because it wasn't written by an angry ex-spouse or vindictive outsider. It was written by a heartbroken woman who'd been deceived by someone she trusted completely. Todd's remaining business clients abandoned him that week. Rebecca, already struggling to find work, discovered that her reputation had now spread beyond Portland to become a cautionary tale about deception and family betrayal. But I still wasn't finished with them. They'd stolen 8 years of my daughter's life, and they were going to pay for every single day of it. Chapter 5. The Trap Springs. By month 3, Todd and Rebecca's lives had imploded so completely that they were barely recognizable as the confident, successful people who'd walked into my living room that first night. But their destruction was about to enter a new phase, one they would never see coming. Marcus had discovered something interesting while digging through Todd's business records. In his desperation to maintain cash flow after losing most of his clients, Todd had begun cutting corners on property management duties. Specifically, he'd been deferring maintenance on several luxury vacation rentals while continuing to collect full management fees from the property owners. This wasn't just unprofessional, it was potentially fraudulent. He's been telling owners that repairs have been completed while keeping the money, Marcus explained. We have invoices for work that was never done, photos showing deteriorating conditions, and maintenance requests that were ignored. How bad is it? Bad enough for criminal charges if the property owners find out. And these aren't just any property owners. They're some of Portland's wealthiest families. People who don't take kindly to being defrauded. The plan was elegant. I would purchase one of the affected properties through a shell company, immediately discover the deferred maintenance, and demand a full accounting of Todd's management practices. Once the fraud was documented, I'd share that information with the other affected property owners. Todd would face not only civil lawsuits, but potential criminal charges for wire fraud and theft. Meanwhile, Rebecca had made a critical error in her increasingly desperate job search. She'd begun lying on her resume and in interviews, claiming work experience she didn't have and references she'd fabricated. Marcus had documented every false claim, every fabricated reference, every embellished credential. When Rebecca finally landed a new job with a small nonprofit organization focused on family services, she'd committed resume fraud with an organization that had zero tolerance for dishonesty, especially regarding family issues. But before I could spring either trap, something unexpected happened. Lily came home from school upset. "Daddy, some kids at school were talking about a newspaper story. They said mean things about Mommy Rebecca and Uncle Todd." My blood ran cold. I've been so focused on destroying Rebecca and Todd that I hadn't considered how the public exposure might affect Lily. She was only 8 years old, and she was still processing the massive changes in her life. What did they say, sweetheart? They said Mommy Rebecca was a bad person who lied about me, and that Uncle Todd was mean to children. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were nice to me before. They brought me presents and told me they loved me. I sat down and pulled her into my lap, feeling a moment of doubt about the path I'd chosen. Lily had been through enough trauma already. Was my quest for revenge making things worse for her? Lily, people are complicated. Sometimes people we love make bad choices that hurt other people. That doesn't mean they never loved you, but it does mean they have to face consequences for their choices. Are you mad at me because Mommy Rebecca did bad things? Oh, sweetheart, no. Never. You didn't do anything wrong. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I will never, ever be mad at you for things other people did. That night, I called Patricia to discuss modifying my approach. Blake, I understand your concern for Lily, but you can't protect her from all of this. The truth is already public, and Rebecca and Todd's actions have consequences that extend beyond your control. But she's 8 years old. She shouldn't have to deal with her classmates talking about her mother's affair. No, she shouldn't. But she also shouldn't have spent 8 years in foster care while her biological father lived an hour away, completely unaware of her existence. Rebecca and Todd created this situation, not you. She was right, but it didn't make the situation easier. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I called Rebecca. We need to talk. All three of us. You, me, and Todd. Blake, my lawyer said. I don't care what your lawyer said. I'm offering you one chance to end this before it gets worse. Much worse. There was a long pause. What do you want? I want you to understand exactly what you've done and exactly what's going to happen if you don't make this right. We met at a neutral location, a conference room in Patricia's law office. Todd looked haggard, his usual confident demeanor replaced by barely contained panic. Rebecca appeared to have lost 20 pounds and aged 5 years. Let me be very clear about where we stand. I began, laying out files on the table. Todd, your business is finished. You've lost 60% of your clients, your reputation is destroyed, and your ex-fiancé has made sure everyone in Portland knows exactly what kind of man you are. But that's just the beginning. I opened the first file. These are documents showing your fraudulent management practices, deferred maintenance, fake invoices, stolen deposits. I have enough evidence to have you charged with wire fraud and theft. The statute of limitations runs for 5 years, which means you'll be looking at federal prison time. Todd's face went white. Rebecca, your situation is similarly precarious. Resume fraud, lying to employers, and of course, the kidnapping charges that are still pending. But beyond the legal issues, you've lost your family's support, your career prospects, and your reputation. I leaned forward. But here's what you don't know yet. I've been methodically documenting every aspect of your deception for the past 3 months. I know about every lie you've told, every person you've deceived, every corner you've cut to maintain your charade. What do you want? Todd asked, his voice barely a whisper. I want justice for what you stole from me and from Lily. But more importantly, I want to make sure this never happens again. I opened the second file. These are non-disclosure agreements, public apologies, and restitution arrangements. You're going to publicly acknowledge what you did, apologize for it, and make financial restitution for Lily's care and my legal expenses. And if we refuse, Rebecca asked, then I will use every legal, financial, and social tool at my disposal to ensure you never recover from this. Your fraud charges will proceed, your families will know every detail of your deception, and your names will become synonymous with betrayal and child abandonment in every community you try to join. I stood up. You have 48 hours to decide. Sign the agreements and accept responsibility, or face the full consequences of your choices. Blake, Rebecca said quietly, I know you hate me, but please don't let that hatred hurt Lily. I don't hate you, Rebecca. I pity you. You had everything, a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, a good life. And you threw it all away for an affair with a man who cared so little about children that he helped you abandon your own. I looked at Todd, and you had a woman who loved you and wanted to build a family with you. Instead, you chose to deceive her while financially supporting a child you refused to acknowledge. Lily is better off without either of you in her life. But she deserves to know that you took responsibility for what you did, rather than continuing to lie and make excuses. The meeting ended with no resolution, but I could see in their faces that they understood the gravity of their situation. They were trapped, and they knew it. The question was whether they would accept responsibility or force me to complete their destruction. Either way, justice would be served. Chapter 6. The Choice and Its Consequences. Rebecca and Todd's decision came exactly 47 hours and 23 minutes after our meeting. They signed the agreements. The public apologies were published in both Portland and Sacramento newspapers, with Rebecca acknowledging that she had made inexcusable choices that hurt my daughter, my husband, and both our families, while Todd admitted to participating in a deception that deprived a father of his daughter and a child of her rightful home. The financial restitution was substantial. 8 years of child support plus interest, my legal expenses, and a college fund for Lily that would ensure her education was secured regardless of their future circumstances. But the most important element was the custody agreement. Rebecca would have supervised visitation with Lily once a month, contingent on her completion of family counseling and a psychological evaluation. Todd would have no contact with Lily whatsoever, a condition he accepted without argument. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 months later, as Lily and I were settling into our new normal, Marcus called with disturbing news. Blake, we have a problem. Rebecca and Todd haven't been honoring the spirit of their agreements. What do you mean? Rebecca has been telling people that she was forced to sign under duress, that you threatened to destroy her life if she didn't comply. She's positioning herself as a victim of your vindictive campaign rather than taking genuine responsibility for her actions. My jaw tightened. And Todd, similar story. He's been telling potential clients that his business failed due to a vindictive ex-partner spreading lies, not because of his own fraudulent practices. He's even suggested that you fabricated evidence against him. I felt the familiar cold anger settling in my chest. They've been given a chance to accept responsibility and move forward with dignity. Instead, they'd chosen to continue lying, this time portraying themselves as victims of my supposed cruelty. There's more, Marcus continued. Rebecca has been using her supervised visits with Lily to subtly undermine your relationship with her. Nothing overtly manipulative, but asking questions about whether you're angry all the time, whether you miss the old days when it was just the three of us, that sort of thing. That was the last straw. I've been willing to allow them to maintain some dignity in defeat, but if they were going to use Lily as a weapon in their campaign to avoid accountability, then the gloves were coming off completely. Marcus, I want you to document every conversation, every lie, every attempt to manipulate the narrative. If they want to play victim, they're going to learn what actual victimization looks like. What are you planning? Total destruction. No mercy, no dignity, no way back. The next phase was more brutal than anything I'd done before. Instead of subtle manipulation of their professional and social networks, I went for direct, overwhelming force. First, I had Marcus compile every lie they'd told since signing the agreements. Every instance where they'd portrayed themselves as victims rather than accepting responsibility. Then I created a comprehensive website documenting their entire deception, complete with court records, communications, and photographic evidence. The website wasn't vindictive or emotional. It was clinical, factual, and devastating. Anyone who searched Rebecca or Todd's names would find a complete accounting of their actions, their lies, and their attempts to avoid accountability. But that was just the foundation. I then hired a reputation management firm, not to clean up their online presence, but to ensure that their deception became the first thing anyone learned about them. Every social media platform, every professional network, every community forum they tried to join would quickly become aware of who they really were. For Todd, this meant the complete end of any possibility of rebuilding his real estate career. For Rebecca, it meant that her attempts to find work in marketing or communications would be impossible. No company could afford to hire someone whose own reputation management was such a public disaster. But the psychological warfare was just beginning. I used my connections in the security industry to ensure that both Rebecca and Todd were subjected to intensive background checks whenever they applied for jobs, apartments, or even dating profiles. Nothing illegal, but thorough enough that their past would be impossible to escape. Every potential employer, landlord, or romantic partner would learn about their history before making any commitments. The effect was exactly what I'd intended. Rebecca moved back to Sacramento to live with her parents, but even there, the story had spread through their social networks. Todd left Portland entirely, but my reach extended far beyond a single city. Within 6 months, they'd both become unemployable, unmarriageable, and socially isolated. But I still wasn't finished. The final phase was about ensuring that their destruction was permanent and that Lily would never have to deal with their manipulation again. I petitioned the court to terminate Rebecca's parental rights entirely, citing her continued attempts to manipulate Lily during supervised visits and her public statements undermining the custody arrangement. The petition was supported by detailed documentation of her behavior and statements provided by Marcus's investigation. Todd, having no legal relationship to Lily, was easier to handle. I simply ensured that any attempt he made to contact us or interfere in our lives would result in immediate legal action for harassment and stalking. The court hearing for terminating Rebecca's parental rights was brutal but necessary. Patricia presented evidence of Rebecca's ongoing manipulation, her refusal to accept genuine responsibility for her actions, and her attempts to undermine Lily's relationship with me. Your Honor, Patricia argued, this is a woman who hid her child for 8 years, gave her away without the father's knowledge, and has spent the past year trying to manipulate that same child against her father. She has shown no genuine remorse, no real acceptance of responsibility, and no ability to put her daughter's well-being above her own desires for sympathy and control. Rebecca's lawyer tried to argue that I had been vindictive and cruel in my response to her deception, but the evidence was overwhelming. Every action I'd taken had been legal, and every consequence she'd suffered had been a direct result of her own choices. The judge's ruling was swift and final. Rebecca's parental rights were terminated, and she was ordered to have no contact with Lily until Lily reached the age of majority and could make her own decisions about their relationship. As Rebecca left the courthouse in tears, I felt no satisfaction, no sense of victory. Just a grim certainty that justice had been served and that Lily was finally safe from further manipulation. That evening, I sat with Lily in our living room, helping her with homework while Scout slept at her feet. She was thriving in her new school, had made several close friends, and showed no signs of trauma from the custody proceedings. Daddy, she said suddenly, I heard you talking to Mrs. Garcia about the court today. Does this mean Mommy Rebecca won't visit anymore? I chose my words carefully. Lily, sometimes adults make choices that hurt other people, and there have to be consequences for those choices. Mommy Rebecca made some decisions that weren't good for you or for our family, so the judge decided it would be better if she didn't visit for a while. Will I see her when I grow up? When you're an adult, you can decide for yourself who you want to have in your life. But for now, it's my job to protect you and make sure you're safe and happy. She nodded seriously, then returned to her homework. No tears, no trauma, just the matter-of-fact acceptance that children have when adults handle difficult situations appropriately. Rebecca and Todd had gambled with my family and lost everything. The consequences of their choices would follow them for the rest of their lives, exactly as they deserved. But Lily and I had everything we needed, each other, a stable home, and a future free from their deception and manipulation. Justice wasn't just served, it was complete. Chapter 7. The New Foundation. 6 months after the court's final ruling, Lily and I had built a life that neither Rebecca nor Todd could have ever imagined. Our home was filled with laughter, love, and the kind of genuine happiness that comes from honesty and trust. Lily was flourishing at school, particularly in science and mathematics, subjects that reminded me daily of how much of her intellectual development I'd missed during those stolen 8 years. She joined the school's robotics club and had made best friends with 2 girls, Emma and Sophie, whose families had welcomed us into their social circle without question or judgment. My business had grown significantly, partly because word had spread through Portland's professional community about how I'd handled the situation with Rebecca and Todd. Several executives had approached me for security consulting specifically because they admired the methodical, thorough way I'd protected my family and held bad actors accountable. But our peaceful new life was about to be tested in a way I never anticipated. It started with a phone call from Marcus on a Tuesday morning in November. Blake, we have a situation. Rebecca's parents want to meet with you. I paused, watching Lily through the kitchen window as she played with Scout in the backyard. What do they want? They want to discuss visitation with Lily. They're claiming that while they understand and support the termination of Rebecca's parental rights, they believe they should have grandparent visitation rights independent of their daughter's actions. Absolutely not. Blake, hear me out. They have a point legally. They had no knowledge of Lily's existence due to Rebecca's deception, and they've been nothing but supportive of you throughout this process. They testified against their own daughter to support your custody case. I considered this. Robert and Mary Hayes had indeed been valuable allies in exposing Rebecca's deception. They provided crucial testimony about Rebecca's lies regarding her supposed infertility, and their shock and anger at discovering their hidden granddaughter had been genuine. But I learned not to trust anyone when it came to protecting Lily. Set up a meeting, I said finally. But make it clear that any relationship with Lily goes through me, on my terms, with my oversight. The meeting took place at Patricia's office the following week. Robert and Mary Hayes looked older than when I'd first met them, worn down by the shame of their daughter's actions and the loss of both Rebecca and their newfound granddaughter. Mr. Morrison, Robert began formally, we want to acknowledge once again that our daughter's actions were inexcusable. Mary and I have spent months trying to understand how we raised a child capable of such deception. We're not here to defend Rebecca or to ask you to forgive her, Mary added. We know that's impossible, and we don't expect it. But we're here to ask if there's any way we might have a relationship with Lily that's separate from our daughter's crimes. I studied them carefully. What exactly are you proposing? Supervised visits, initially, Robert said. Perhaps once a month, here in Portland, with you present the entire time. We understand that trust must be earned, and we're willing to work within whatever boundaries you set. We know we failed as parents with Rebecca, Mary continued, tears in her eyes. We don't want to compound that failure by losing our granddaughter entirely. She's the only family we have left that we can be proud of. Their pain was genuine, but I'd learned to look beyond emotion to practical realities. If I were to consider this, I said carefully, there would be conditions. Non-negotiable conditions. Name them, Robert said immediately. First, you would have no contact with Rebecca regarding Lily. Ever. If I discover that you're sharing information about Lily with Rebecca or facilitating any form of indirect contact, all visitation ends permanently. They nodded. Second, any relationship you have with Lily acknowledges that I am her only parent. You're not trying to replace anyone or fill any void. You're simply grandparents who want to know their granddaughter. Of course, Mary said. Third, if Lily ever expresses discomfort with these visits or asks for them to stop, they stop. Her emotional well-being comes before anyone else's desires, including mine. We wouldn't want it any other way, Robert assured me. And finally, I said, my voice becoming harder, if you ever attempt to manipulate Lily, undermine my authority, or use your relationship with her to advance any agenda other than loving her unconditionally, I will destroy you as thoroughly as I destroyed your daughter. Are we clear? The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. They'd seen what I was capable of when someone threatened my family. Crystal clear, Robert said quietly. I agreed to a trial period of supervised visits, starting with 2 hours once a month at my house. Patricia drew up an agreement outlining all the conditions, and both Robert and Mary signed without hesitation. The first visit was awkward, but successful. Lily was initially shy with her grandparents, but Mary's gentle manner and Robert's patient interest in her robotics projects gradually drew her out. They brought photo albums of Rebecca's childhood, carefully edited to focus on family history rather than their daughter specifically. By the third visit, Lily was excited to see them, and I began to relax my supervision slightly, allowing them to talk privately while I remained in the same room. It was during the fourth visit that the real test came. Lily was showing Mary a school project when she suddenly asked, Grandma Mary, do you think Mommy Rebecca misses me? Mary's eyes filled with tears, and she looked at me uncertainly. This was exactly the kind of emotional manipulation I'd been watching for, but Mary's response surprised me. Oh, sweetheart, Mary said gently, I'm sure she does miss you. But sometimes grown-ups make such serious mistakes that they have to live with the consequences, even when those consequences make them very sad. But you still love her even though she made mistakes? Yes, I still love her. She's my daughter, and I always will love her. But love doesn't mean accepting bad behavior or pretending that serious mistakes don't have serious consequences. Lily nodded thoughtfully. Daddy says that loving someone means protecting them from people who might hurt them, even if those people love them too. Your daddy is very wise, Mary said, looking at me with something approaching respect. That evening, after Robert and Mary had left, Lily and I talked about the conversation. Daddy, is it okay that I wondered about Mommy Rebecca? Of course it's okay, sweetheart. It's natural to wonder about people who were important to you, even when they're not in your life anymore. But I don't want to see her again. Is that bad? I knelt down to her level. Lily, you get to decide how you feel about people. You don't have to love someone just because they're related to you, and you don't have to forgive someone just because they say they're sorry. Your feelings are yours, and they're valid whatever they are. I like Grandma Mary and Grandpa Robert. They're nice, and they don't make me feel confused like Mommy Rebecca did. That was the moment I knew the Hayes family visits could continue. Lily was making clear distinctions between the people who made her feel safe and those who didn't, and her grandparents had passed that test. Over the following months, Robert and Mary became genuine fixtures in our lives. They attended Lily's robotics competitions, sent thoughtful birthday gifts, and provided the kind of unconditional grandparent love that enriched her life without complicating it. More importantly, they never once mentioned Rebecca or tried to advocate for their daughter's return to our lives. They understood that their relationship with Lily was a privilege, not a right, and they treated it accordingly. By the 1-year anniversary of our first meeting, I'd relaxed the supervision enough to allow them to take Lily to lunch or the park, though always with clear boundaries and return times. The contrast with Rebecca's behavior was stark. Where Rebecca had constantly tried to manipulate situations to her advantage, Robert and Mary consistently put Lily's needs first. Where Rebecca had lied and deceived, they were transparently honest about everything, including their daughter's failures. They'd proven that blood relationships didn't automatically create trustworthiness, but that trustworthiness, once earned, could create lasting family bonds. As I watched Lily and her grandparents work together on a science project in our living room, I realized that sometimes the destruction of toxic relationships makes room for healthy ones to flourish. Rebecca and Todd were gone from our lives permanently, but the space they'd left behind had been filled with people who genuinely cared about Lily's well-being more than their own desires. That was a victory worth celebrating. Chapter 8. The Unexpected Return. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm by the time Lily turned 10. She was thriving academically, had strong friendships, and her relationship with her grandparents had become one of the bright spots in all our lives. I'd begun dating a pediatrician named Dr. Sarah Montgomery, whom Lily adored, and my business had expanded to 3 offices across the Pacific Northwest. For 2 years, Rebecca and Todd had been nothing more than cautionary tales, their names occasionally mentioned in conversations about the importance of honest communication in relationships. I'd assumed they were somewhere far away, dealing with the permanent consequences of their choices. I was wrong. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday morning when Lily's school called to report that a woman claiming to be her mother had attempted to check her out of class. The woman had identification showing her name as Rebecca Morrison, Principal Davis explained. When we told her that only you were authorized for pickup, she became agitated and claimed there had been a mistake in our records. Did she leave peacefully? Eventually, but not before demanding to know who had changed the authorization forms and threatening to contact the school board about the error. My blood ran cold. Rebecca had legally reverted to her maiden name after our divorce, and she had no legal right to use my surname. More importantly, she was violating the court order by attempting to contact Lily. Did you call the police? We thought we should contact you first. Should we file a report? Absolutely. And please send me any security footage of the incident. I called Patricia immediately. Rebecca's back, and she's violating the restraining order. I'll file for an emergency hearing. In the meantime, increase security at Lily's school and consider having Marcus provide personal protection until we know what Rebecca's planning. That afternoon, Marcus arrived with disturbing news. Blake, it's not just Rebecca. Todd's back too, and they're not alone. What do you mean? They've hired a lawyer named Anthony Morrison. No relation to you. Just an unfortunate coincidence. He specializes in what he calls father's rights cases, but his real specialty is challenging custody arrangements through public pressure and media manipulation. My stomach dropped. They're going public. It gets worse. Morrison has connections with several men's rights organizations and anti-family court activists. They're positioning Rebecca as a mother who was systematically destroyed by a vindictive ex-husband, and Todd as the victim of your campaign of harassment. But the court records are being selectively interpreted. They're focusing on the private investigation, the reputation destruction, the systematic targeting of their professional relationships. They're claiming you used your wealth and connections to manufacture evidence and manipulate the legal system. I felt the familiar cold anger settling in, but this time it was different. This wasn't just about me. They were threatening Lily's stability and security. What's their endgame? For what I can gather, they want the court to reconsider the custody arrangement. Morrison is arguing that Rebecca was coerced into giving up her parental rights and that the original proceedings were tainted by your extra-legal intimidation tactics. And they think this strategy will work. In today's media environment, maybe. The story of a grieving mother fighting to reconnect with her daughter plays better than the story of a woman who abandoned her child for 8 years. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I sat in my study planning my response. Rebecca and Todd had made their biggest mistake yet. They'd assumed that my previous restraint meant I was unwilling to completely destroy them. They were about to learn otherwise. The first step was immediate and overwhelming legal action. Patricia filed for contempt of court, violation of restraining orders, and harassment charges. We requested an emergency hearing and demanded that Rebecca and Todd be held in jail until trial. But legal action would be slow, and they were already mobilizing their public relations campaign. The second step was information warfare. I had Marcus compile every piece of evidence from our previous investigations, every lie, every deception, every attempt to manipulate the narrative. Then I created a comprehensive counter-narrative that positioned their return not as a fight for parental rights, but as a continuation of their pattern of manipulation and deception. The website I created documenting their original deception was updated with their latest actions, including security footage of Rebecca attempting to remove Lily from school and copies of court orders they were violating. But the third step was the most important. I was going to use their own strategy against them. If they wanted to fight in the court of public opinion, I would give them a fight they'd never forget. I reached out to investigative journalists who specialized in family court stories, providing them with complete access to all court records and evidence. Not just the favorable parts, everything. The entire timeline of Rebecca's deception, the evidence of abandonment, the attempts at manipulation during supervised visits, and now their violation of court orders. The story that emerged was devastating for Rebecca and Todd's narrative. Local Mother's Fight for Custody reveals years of deception. Read the headline in Portland's largest newspaper. The article methodically dismantled every claim made by Morrison and his clients, using court records and documented evidence to show that Rebecca hadn't been destroyed by a vindictive ex-husband. She'd been held accountable for abandoning her child. The article included interviews with Jennifer Walsh, Rebecca's former employer, who detailed the company policies Rebecca had violated by conducting an affair using work resources. It included interviews with Catherine Mills, Todd's ex-fiancée, who explained how Todd had lied to her about his family values while secretly supporting a child he refused to acknowledge. Most damaging of all, it included the psychological evaluation that had been conducted during the original custody proceedings, which showed that Rebecca displayed narcissistic tendencies and an inability to accept responsibility for her actions. The public backlash was swift and merciless. The men's rights organizations that had initially supported Rebecca's case quietly distanced themselves when the full facts became public. Morrison found himself facing ethics complaints for misrepresenting facts to the media. But Rebecca and Todd weren't finished fighting. 3 days later, they attempted to kidnap Lily. The attempt was clumsy and desperate. They waited outside her school and approached her as she walked to the pickup area where Mrs. Garcia was waiting. "Lily, sweetie, it's Mommy Rebecca," Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice calm. "There's been a mistake, and I need to take you home." Lily, now 10 years old and much more confident than the frightened 8-year-old who'd appeared at my door, looked at Rebecca with clear recognition but no warmth. "You're not supposed to talk to me," Lily said firmly. "My daddy said you weren't allowed." "Honey, the judge changed his mind. Everything's been fixed now." That's when Todd stepped forward. "Lily, we need to go now. Your father is in trouble, and we need to keep you safe." It was exactly the wrong thing to say. Lily had been taught about stranger danger and manipulation tactics. She immediately ran toward Mrs. Garcia while screaming for help. The school's security system captured everything on video. Rebecca and Todd were arrested within hours and charged with attempted kidnapping, violation of restraining orders, and child endangerment. Morrison tried to spin the incident as a misunderstanding, but the video evidence was overwhelming. At the emergency custody hearing the next day, Judge Williams didn't hide her disgust. "In 30 years on the bench," she said, "I have rarely seen such a blatant disregard for court orders and child welfare. The defendants not only violated multiple restraining orders, but attempted to kidnap a child through deception and manipulation." Rebecca's new lawyer tried to argue that she was simply a mother trying to reconnect with her daughter, but Judge Williams cut him off. "Counselor, your client lost her parental rights through a legal process that included extensive evidence of her abandonment and deception. Her response to that legal ruling was not to accept responsibility and work toward rehabilitation. It was to violate court orders and attempt to kidnap the child." She turned to Rebecca and Todd. "You will both be held without bail pending trial. If convicted, you will face significant prison time. More importantly, you have demonstrated that you pose a clear and present danger to this child's safety and well-being." As they were led away in handcuffs, Rebecca turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Yes," I replied quietly, "it is." But I was wrong again. The final confrontation was still to come. Chapter 9. The Final Reckoning. 6 months later, Rebecca and Todd were convicted on all charges and sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for attempted kidnapping across state lines. Morrison lost his law license and faced criminal charges for conspiracy and witness tampering. Their public supporters had vanished completely, leaving them isolated and defeated. But their imprisonment didn't end the story. It provided the final chapter. During their incarceration, both Rebecca and Todd began reaching out to other inmates, family members, and even prison staff, trying to build sympathy for their case and gather support for appeals. They painted themselves as victims of my wealth and influence, claiming they'd been railroaded by a corrupt system. Marcus, who had maintained surveillance on their communications as part of the ongoing legal proceedings, brought me disturbing news about their prison activities. "They're not done, Blake. Rebecca has been writing letters to Lily, dozens of them. The prison has been holding them per the restraining order, but she's been telling other inmates that you're intercepting her correspondence with her daughter. And Todd, he's been trying to contact investigative journalists, claiming he has evidence that you manufactured the case against them. He's also been reaching out to prisoners' rights organizations, trying to position himself as a victim of prosecutorial misconduct. Even from prison, they were continuing their campaign of manipulation and deception. But their biggest mistake was yet to come. Rebecca began corresponding with a true crime podcaster named Elena Rodriguez, who specialized in stories about wrongful convictions and family court corruption. Rebecca fed Elena a carefully crafted narrative about being separated from her daughter by a vindictive ex-husband who used his wealth and connections to manipulate the legal system. Elena, initially sympathetic to Rebecca's story, began investigating the case for a potential episode. She reached out to me for comment. "Mr. Morrison, I'm working on a story about your ex-wife's case. She claims that you used private investigators and media manipulation to destroy her reputation and steal her daughter. Would you like to respond to these allegations?" "Ms. Rodriguez, I'd be happy to provide you with complete access to all court records, evidence, and documentation from this case. I think you'll find that the facts tell a very different story than the one Rebecca has shared with you." Elena's investigation took 3 months. When she was finished, she had a story, but not the one Rebecca had expected. The podcast episode, titled "The Mother Who Gave Away Her Child," was a devastating expose of Rebecca and Todd's deception. Elena had interviewed everyone involved in the case: Jennifer Walsh, Catherine Mills, Robert and Mary Hayes, Dr. Hayes, Patricia, Marcus, and even Mrs. Patterson's neighbors, who remembered Rebecca's infrequent visits to see Lily. The episode methodically dismantled every lie Rebecca had told, using court records, audio recordings, and documented evidence to show that she hadn't been a victim of my vindictiveness. She'd been held accountable for abandoning her child and then lying about it for years. But the most powerful moment came when Elena interviewed Lily, now 11 years old and articulate enough to speak for herself. "Did you want to live with your biological mother?" Elena asked gently. "No," Lily said simply. "She made me feel confused and scared. She would ask me questions about my daddy and try to make me think he was mean. But my daddy has never been mean to me. He protects me and takes care of me and makes me feel safe." "Do you remember living with Mrs. Patterson?" "A little bit. She was nice, but she told me that my real parents couldn't take care of me right then. I always wondered why. Now I know it's because my real daddy didn't know I existed." "How do you feel about your life now?" "I love my life. I have my daddy and Scout and Grandma Mary and Grandpa Robert and Dr. Sarah. I have friends and school and robotics club. I'm happy." "Do you miss your biological mother?" It was a long pause. "I feel sad that she made bad choices, but I don't miss being confused and scared all the time." The podcast episode went viral, eventually reaching over 2 million downloads. Rebecca and Todd's narrative was completely destroyed, and their appeals were denied by every court that reviewed them. But the real conclusion came 2 years later, when Lily turned 13. I found her in her room one evening, reading a letter. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Daddy, this is from Mommy Rebecca. She wrote it before she went to prison, but the court just gave it to me now that I'm older." I sat down beside her. "Do you want to talk about it?" She says she's sorry and that she loves me and that she hopes someday I'll understand why she made the choices she did. "What does that make you feel?" Lily was quiet for a long time. "I think she does love me in her own way, but I also think she doesn't understand what love really means." "What do you think love means?" "Love means putting the other person first, even when it's hard. Love means telling the truth, even when it hurts. Love means protecting someone, not using them." She looked at me with those green eyes that matched my own. "You love me the right way, Daddy. You've always put me first, even when it was hard. You told me the truth about everything, even the bad parts. And you protected me from people who wanted to hurt me, even when those people were related to you. Especially then. Family isn't just about blood, Daddy. Family is about who takes care of you and makes you feel safe and helps you become the best person you can be." She folded the letter and put it in her desk drawer. "I might write her back someday when I'm grown up, but not to have a relationship with her. Just to let her know that I'm okay and that I'm happy. And if you decide you never want to write back, that's okay too. I know. You taught me that I get to choose who I let into my life." That night, as I tucked her into bed, Lily asked me one final question. "Daddy, do you think Mommy Rebecca and Uncle Todd learned anything from what happened?" I considered my answer carefully. I think they learned that actions have consequences. Whether they learned anything about responsibility or putting others first, I don't know. But that's not our concern anymore. Because we're safe now. Because you're safe now. And you'll always be safe, as long as I'm here to protect you." She smiled and closed her eyes. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Lily. More than anything in the world." As I turned off her light and walked downstairs, I reflected on the 3 years since that rainy night when a little girl had appeared at my door, calling me Daddy. Rebecca and Todd had stolen 8 years of Lily's childhood and nearly destroyed both our lives with their deception and manipulation. But in the end, their cruelty had led to something beautiful. Lily and I had built a relationship based on honesty, trust, and unconditional love. She had grandparents who adored her, a potential stepmother who cared for her deeply, and a future full of possibilities. Rebecca and Todd had lost everything: their freedom, their reputations, their relationships, their futures. But more importantly, they'd lost any claim to the family they'd tried to manipulate and control. The justice wasn't just in their punishment. It was in Lily's happiness, security, and confidence. It was in the life we'd built together, free from their lies and manipulation. They'd gambled with my family and lost everything. I protected my daughter and gained everything that mattered. In the end, that was all the revenge I needed. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.